Okay, we're live. We'll let the stream breathe, as you guys know, just for a second. Let's make sure it's nice and stable for your podcast enjoyment. Welcome in, everybody. It is the Huddle Up podcast, presented as always by Mile High Huddle, powered by Overtime Media. I'm your host, Chad Jensen, and with me, as always, my partner in crime. You know him, you love him. He is Zack Kelberman. Zack, it is our favorite podcast of the week. It is the Mile High Mailbag. We're going to get to the great questions of our listeners here in just a few minutes, but I wanted to get your take on the latest with Kareem Jackson, who we don't necessarily need to read the quote. I can if we need to, if we want to. But he let slip, not so much let slip. He revealed in a conversation on, I think it was Sandy Clough and Orlando Franklin's radio show on 104.3 The Fan, that John Elway and Vic Fangio checked with him to get his opinion on A.J. Bouye before that trade was made a couple months ago now. I mean, executed in March, but you get my point, which is interesting that you have the coaches in the front office checking with personnel on a potential trade move.
Well, they play together. They were teammates in Houston, and I guess, it'd be like the Broncos and Elway going to Fangio to get Prince Amukamara's evaluation. It's just familiarity breeds a more accurate opinion of a player's talent or lack thereof, ability, fit in the system. So I like the fact that Broncos aren't consolidating their analysis to their own decision makers. They're looking out of office, I should say, and going to former teammates, going to some players and getting that perspective. It's different constructing a team from a front office from that perch, but when you're on the same level as players on the field, when you go down to a human level with these guys, it can add a whole new complexion to a potential move. So I like where the Broncos went with that. I like how they're thinking. We want to bring in Bouye. Let's go talk to his former teammate. Would he be a good fit?
As much intelligence as you can gather on a player before drafting him, signing him, acquiring him via trade, the more the better. In fact, here's what Jackson said, quote, and again, this was on 104.3 The Fan, quote, "Man, I was very excited. Actually, they asked me about Bouye previous to making that move, and I was kind of waiting to see what was going to happen with it or whatever. Once they made the move, I was very excited because I know what he is capable of." And in another quote, close quote, by the way, in another quote, he talked about how A.J. Bouye is, just he can do anything you need to from a corner perspective. Quote, "He can do it all. He can play off coverage. He can play press coverage. He can go follow if he needs to," which I don't think he will have to with us getting Bryce Callahan back healthy, close quote. So just kind of an interesting little nugget that adds some context to the Bouye trade. I mean, it also goes back a little bit farther than that to Vic Fangio coveting Bouye as a free agent when he was DC of the defensive coordinator of the Chicago Bears. What was that, Zach? 2017 when he signed with Jacksonville. He almost signed with the Bears. So this has been a long time coming for Fangio.
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah, he's been wanting to get his hands on Bouye, and he's been wanting to get him in his system. And as we saw last year, I think for the most part, cornerback take a step forward in the system. We know linebackers do, we know safeties do, but it seems like his system is very friendly to cornerbacks as well. So I'm happy he finally got his hands on Bouye, and hopefully he can revert him back to that Pro Bowl, all-pro level that he was not too long ago.
All right, guys. We're going to get to your questions here in just a minute because it is the Mile High Mailbag. Zach and I are your football priests, and each and every week we are here to offer you the absolution and the answers to your burning Broncos questions. First, though, just a couple of quick matters of business. Make sure you're following the show on Twitter at HuddleUpPod. It is simply the best way to keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening with this show in real time. Excuse me. And while you're at it, make sure you follow the main account at Mile High Huddle to stay plugged into all things Broncos, breaking news, and analysis as it is happening. So take care of that business. All right, Zach, we've got a few questions stacking up. Sorry, I got a frog in my throat. But first, let's say hello to those who've been hanging out in the room. Sterling, Buona Beast, Preem, Robert, what's going on? Noble Young, Freddie jumping in with a quick super. Appreciate that. Freddie.
Thank you, Freddie.
That means a lot, my friend. Michael, what's going on? Appreciate you, my friend. Freddie's question. He says, how about trading back into the first round and taking Mims? An interesting question, which piggybacks somewhat, Zach, off of something that Mike Kliss purportedly said today. Now, this is Thursday. I did not hear this myself. I was tagged on Twitter by a fellow by the name of Sarah Chang, And he said this to me, Zach, quote, "Hey, Chad, just heard that Kliss said Denver possibly could trade down to 21, trade back to 21, and get Denzel Mims, then trade back up to 29 for A.J. Terrell, the corner from Clemson, and then get a tackle in the second round, pick 46. Thoughts? Would you be good with this?" So I'm going to combine that here with what Freddie's asking us. Your thoughts on Mims in the first round?
Obviously, it's dependent on what they do with the 15th pick. They would not have to go wide receiver at that pick. If it would depend to me, Chad. I would prefer a wide receiver at 15, but if they go offensive line, then I would be okay with trading back up in the first round for a player like Mims. I don't want a cornerback, though, in either round. I think that position, I might be in the minority with that. I think that position can wait till the second or third round. The first couple picks, no matter where they make them, Chad, in the first round, they come back in the first round, it has to be addressing to wide receiver, offensive line. So it's not my first inclination to take Mims or trade back up for him. I'd rather take a blue chip stud like Ruggs, Judy, a CD Lamb at 15, and then work my way back. But if you trade back into the second round, trade up in the second round, I'm more okay with that in Mims' value than trading back up in the first round.
I mean, if the Broncos did miss out on the big three early on, in fact, let me get this off the screen real quick. It's distracting me. If the Broncos did miss out on the big three in the first round, I mean, that next kind of crop of wideouts, honestly, comes down to Mims, comes down to Jefferson, maybe throw in Rager, maybe throw in Shenault. But Jefferson probably would emerge for me as I don't know. It'd be a tough one between him and Mims as the next best option. But I don't hate the idea of taking Mims. It would just have to be in the right place. Brian brings up something a little piece of news that broke right as we were about to go live here tonight. He says, it looks like Bill O'Brien got the short end of the stick again, giving up a second-round pick for a shell of his former self in Brandon Cooks. They got only a second and a fourth, and David Johnson's $10.2 million salary for DeAndre Hopkins. So anyway, they were basically trying to replace Hopkins with Cooks, giving up a second-round pick for the process for the privilege. Zach, your thoughts?
They essentially traded DeAndre Hopkins for Brandon Cooks. That's a huge, huge downgrade for my money and for what they're taking on in salary. Bill O'Brien is by far the NFL's worst general manager. He's never met a trade he's turned down, Chad, and he's making worse moves for his organization. This was a playoff team, a perennial playoff team, and he's slowly just undoing brick by brick by brick and consolidating all this power at the same time. I don't like the trade. I don't like what they're doing with the Texans. I feel bad for Deshaun Watson, ultimately. He's losing everyone around him, and his new supporting cast is a giant downgrade. Bill O'Brien, he's just a fool, I believe.
Yep, he is definitely not helping his reputation as a personnel guy that has an inkling of what he's doing. I mean, it's almost like, I don't know how you would rationalize it, but Hopkins replacing him with Cooks. I mean, once you made that trade to get rid of Hopkins, I can understand why you might think you can get a little something out of Cooks, but the value of that trade is it's ski-wampus. And if you are Deshaun Watson right now, you're going, what in the Sam Hill is going on? My weapons are getting topsy-turvy here.
You're saying trade me for a 7th-round pick, Bill O'Brien.
Let's grab
Deshaun Watson.
Let's grab Mark here. He says, would you trade back to 25 for Laviska Shenault and a 2nd and 4th round pick? So if trading back, if you swap spots with 25, I'm not even sure who's at 25 now, but to take Laviska Shenault and grab a 2nd and a 4th round pick for your troubles, I don't like Shenault that early. I mean, right. I wouldn't be opposed to trading back and getting that kind of loot for the trade, but Laviska Shenault for me is a really talented, really intriguing wide receiver, but taking him in the first round is playing with fire just because he's such an injury risk. I mean, you listen to someone like Eric Trickle who's done his due diligence, talked to people in the scouting community, trying to get the 411 on Shenault's, health situation. He doesn't think there's anything really concerning there long-term from what he's heard. But for me, that's all fine and dandy. Just considering how prolific his injury report is over the years at CU, Zach, the earliest I would even consider Shenault is in the 2nd round. And even then, I might wait and just see, hey, if he's there in the 3rd, we'll take a flyer. If not, we're just going to go ahead and let this dude pass us on by.
Yeah, you might be agreeing with me here, Chad. I wouldn't touch Shenault. It might be unpopular. I'm not touching him until the third round. He's not that explosive playmaker the Broncos need. He's more Cortland Sutton than Tyreek Hill, in my opinion. Great contested catch wide receiver. Great, he has some great ability to his game, but his injury concerns scare me. His injury history scares me. It gives me pause. I would not take him in the first round. I would not even take him in the second round. There's too many good receivers in this draft class. If this was a less gluttonous draft class, then sure, he could be a second round prospect. But for my money, for what he brings to the table and what his red flags are, his medicals say to me, I don't want the Broncos investing that much for Drew Lock into a guy who's perennially injured. It's just bad business.
Got to grab this super from Bronx legend, who the stream passed by his super chat card, so I can't show it on the screen. But Bronx, we really do appreciate that, my friend.
Yes,
he says, a little off topic here, but I just received the new draft hat for this year, which I like. How do you guys feel about them? I mean, it's okay. Isn't it black, if I'm not mistaken? I think I saw you on Twitter with that. I got tagged in that, Bronx legend. And I mean, it's okay. I don't know if you've had a chance yet, Zach, to see that hat, but it's all right. I'll see if I can find a picture of it.
I never like the draft hats. I've never been that big of a fan of them. They're just another add-on, another way for the NFL to make money and capitalize on the draft. I prefer just the standard Broncos hat. I'm a very minimalist kind of person. I'm a traditionalist at heart. So I like the Broncos logo. I like their Broncos hats. I like the Broncos gear, and also our Huddle Up Pod gear as well. I'm a little partial to that.
There we go. See, we're professionals on this podcast. We know how to ease it in, work it in. I'll show you guys real quick in case you haven't seen this draft hat. Far be it from me to do the heavy lifting for the Broncos and selling their merch, but I think it's appropriate to show you guys what Bronx Legend is talking about here. There's the hat, as you can see there.
Right.
So Broncos country on the side in stitching. You got the logo on the front, kind of like almost like a neon sign look, the wire lighting of a neon sign. Anyway, kind of cool. Other than that, my friend, no major evaluation on that. Let me make sure I didn't miss anybody else that skipped by. All right, so appreciate you again, Bronx Legend. That means a lot to us. And Freddie jumped back in with another super. Thanks, my friend. That means a lot.
That's awesome.
You know it does. And he says this: if the top 3 wide receivers are gone at 15, we could trade back into the first and get Mims plus a second, and with extra draft picks, move up in the second, get Shenault, then draft a bunch of OTs and corners, 3 amigos plus Fant. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different scenarios that could unfold. The whole thing with Mims, the whole thing with Shenault is they're attractive in their own right for this team. They can fit in different ways for this team. But, Zach, it has to be in the right place in the draft. The value has to be right. I'm not sure. I mean, Mims I could probably live with as a late first-round pick if you traded back. Not Shenault, though.
I don't understand the affinity with trading back, though, in these mock draft scenarios, Chad. The Broncos have too many picks as it is. Do you want even more for them to not make? You want even more for them to take flyers on? They're going to use the picks they have, 10 already, which is enough to trade up. I would not look for the Broncos to trade back unless a worst case scenario happens where they don't have anyone on the board that they've wanted and they're just trying to get a value pick in the later rounds. So I would not at all look for the Broncos to trade down this draft at any round. I look for the Broncos to trade up.
Jay Stylos jumps in on YouTube saying, I heard Vic Fangio is interested in Patrick Queen, the LSU linebacker. Should we trade back to get him? He's one of those players, Zach, that for me, I really like him. It just comes down to priorities in the draft. Do you feel like taking a linebacker in the first round, which is probably what you'd have to do, maybe early second in terms of Patrick Queen, is the right value? Now, if we go back to the topic of yesterday's show, Mike Kliss kind of hinting at the Broncos, making their pick at 15 and then using some of their third round capital. They have 3/3 this year to trade back up in between pick 46 and pick 15 to take another guy. If that were the case and you grab Patrick Queen early in the second round, I could be behind that. I'm not sure about the viability of giving up a couple of thirds or whatever the ask would be to get Queen at that point. But I do like him. He would be that athletic complement to Alexander Johnson, really help you going sideline to sideline, but also covering tight ends.
I'm all over Patrick Queen, Chad, in the second round. I just do not think he drops that far. I'm very wavy on taking a linebacker in the first round, unless the Broncos trade back into the late 20s. And even then, I would prefer Kenneth Murray over Patrick Queen. That's just my subjective opinion. I do not want an inside linebacker at 15. I don't want a defensive lineman at 15. I don't want a cornerback or safety. I don't really want a defender at 15 or in the first round, unless it's a worst case scenario where all the offensive linemen and all the wide receivers, the top ones, are off the board already. Second round, sure. I'm all for Patrick Queen. I'm all for Kenneth Murray in the second if they're there. First round, though, has to be offense.
Terry Randall jumps in up in Canada, proving, as always, that Broncos country is not a geographic location. It is a state of being. $5 super. Thank you, Terry. You know we love you, bro. He says, suppose Vaughn and Chubb combine for 30-plus sacks this season. Can we get to 55 as a team? Hashtag football priest, hashtag state of being. You know, if they get to 30, then yeah, all bets are off on hitting that number. But, you know, that's a mountain to overcome in terms of hitting a number. But Zach, the one thing I'll say is, you know, all bets are off. We'll see, because Vic Fangio, everywhere he goes, it kind of takes a little time for him to get everybody up to speed and everyone to get comfortable with his system, and also for him to acquire the right personnel in the right places to really make his system thrive. But once he gets all those pieces in place and everyone's acclimated to the scheme, Zach, his scheme, you can go back into Chicago, you can go back to the 49ers and beyond. At a certain point, it goes from 0 to 60 really, really fast. And you're like, whoa, where did this defense come from? It's just, in the case of the Broncos, he started out with some really, I think, arguably the most talented defense he ever started out with on day one, but there were still a lot of pieces in place that he needed to add, not all of which yet can be accounted for, and it takes time for these players to acclimate to the scheme.
Yeah, I'm a little tentative to put a number on the combined sacks for Vaughn and Chubb. If they can get into the double digits both, if they can get to 25 total, I mean, you're going to have sacks come from different players this year with the different pieces the Broncos have with another year in Fangio's system. Jarrell Casey's going to get some sacks. Draymond Jones can get some sacks. Even Bryce Callahan blitzing from the slots and to get some sacks. They're going to be more aggressive this year, and the defense will play out of the gates better because it's a full year in the system already. It's continuity. So if Chubb can be back to a double-digit guy, Von Miller can return to being Von Miller, this defense will take off because they're going to have help, Chad, for once from different areas. Up front push, a secondary push, and the whole defense collectively will benefit.
Listening in Panama, in Central America. I don't know how to pronounce your name, Suya yet. Anyway, never miss a pod. Thanks for all you
awesome.
do.
That's really cool.
Awesome, my friend.
Thank you.
Awesome. Hashtag state of being. Jack Evans, what realistic draft pick would you guys want the Broncos to take the most? Any round or any position? We spend a lot of time, Zach, talking about the first round and pick 15 and maneuvering in the first and all that. So I'm gonna go with a different pick, and I'm gonna say a realistic pick that I would like to see the Broncos make is Logan Wilson in the third round, the linebacker from Wyoming. And oddly enough, that was a pick made by the MMQB. They recently, I think it was today, released a 5-round mock, and they had the Broncos taking Logan Wilson in the third round. That's a realistic, I don't know if it's necessarily the one I want the Broncos to make the most, but that's one realistic fit that I'd like to see. Perfect player, round, value altogether.
That's a great pick right there, Chad. Realistically, everyone knows how I feel about the first round. I want a wide receiver. I would take any of the big three. I would take Tristan Wirfs. I would take any of the Andrew Thomas, any of the big offensive tackles. In the second round, though, a realistic pick for me to kind of piggyback off what you were saying, Cesar Ruiz. I think at the second round pick, if he can last that long at that value, it's like a Dalton Reisner all over again. You're getting an instant day one starter, solidifying your offensive line and the protection for lock, and getting a guy in the second round who's a first-round caliber talent. So you have yours, I have mine. I think that's not a pipe dream. We're not being implausible. Both those picks can happen. If they do, I think the Broncos would target their roster building the correct way.
Mark jumps in with the $2 super. Appreciate you, my friend. He says, would you trade back to 25 for Shenault and 2 third-rounders? I would trade back to 25 for 2 third-rounders potentially. But again, guys, I don't like Shenault at 25. And listen, I know that he is a higher profile prospect than maybe most because of how many Broncos fans are also CU Buffs fans. But I just don't personally like that value, Zach, at 25. Maybe at 46. Maybe.
But
not 25.
That would be 46 for me would be the minimum I would take Shenault. I'm just not an overly big fan of his game. I think he gets more love because he's a local product, Chad, but he's not overly spectacular, at least compared to the other receivers in this draft class. They move down to the 20s. I'm taking Cushenberry. I'm looking perhaps at an inside linebacker, looking at maybe an offensive tackle. Maybe Becton fell that far. I am not taking Shenault in the first round. I'm not taking him in the second round. I'm not touching him till the third if he lasts that far, which he probably won't.
Brian says, I hope the Broncos get an inside linebacker in the draft and get rid of Todd Davis. Another example that Todd Davis, I think, kind of underappreciated by a large, I'm not going to say a majority of Broncos fans, but a large swath of Broncos fans. You might get your wish, Brian. You might get your wish. Only time will tell, my friend. Edward jumps in, one of our Super Chat superstars from Mount Rushmore with a $1 Super Chat. Appreciate
Thank you,
Ed.
Edward.
You know, we really appreciate that, my friend. James, I see your question. We kind of already addressed the Texans making the Cooks trade. Let's see here. We grabbed that one. Bear with me one second.
Getting questions about Vaughn being traded. This is still a thing in 2020, Chad. This has been going on for like 3 years now. The Broncos are not trading Von Miller. He's going to bounce back this season with a true Vaughn effort. He's not being traded. So I don't know why.
I agree. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. Duke Rose jumps in, $10 super. Appreciate you, Duke.
That's awesome.
Good to see you. He says, is there an argument to where Ruggs and Judy might be better than Lamb? I like Lamb being a Big 12 guy, but he wasn't going against any good defenses in the Big 12 compared to Ruggs and Judy in the SEC. And that's a valid, fair point, Zach. But for me, there's definitely an argument to be made there, Duke, to answer your question. But I have Lamb is my personal favorite of the big three. I don't know. There's something about him I think would really complement Cortland Sutton. And maybe he doesn't have we know he doesn't have the same straight line explosive speed as a Henry Ruggs, but what he can do as an athlete and that body control and just how smooth he is. I mean, he's no slouch himself in the open field, but there is an argument to be made about level of competition, Big 12 compared to the SEC.
Yeah, Duke, that's a really good point you brought up. I will say about Judy, I think he's the more advanced prospect. I said this on yesterday's pod. He's the more advanced prospect. I think he has a higher floor initially, but players like Ruggs, players like CeeDee Lamb, to me, they have the higher ceiling. So it's risk versus reward. If the Broncos want a guy who's going to come in right away, knows a little more advanced route running like Judy, he'd be the guy. But if they want explosive ability and just unlimited upside, to me, that's Ruggs or Lamb. That's the difference.
Larry jumps in and says, what draft day trade would make you guys say Whiskey, Tango, Foxtrot, WTF in a good or a bad way? That is a good question. I would say if the Broncos traded up into the top 5 for anybody other than Isaiah Simmons, Jeffrey Okudah.
Yep.
Here's one. If they traded up and took Chase Young in the top 5, I would say Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. Only there would be no acronym. It would be me shouting the real words from the rooftops.
To me, there's so many I can think of. If this is assuming this means trading in the draft, not trading a player. If the Broncos trade Phillip Lindsay, which is a question we got, Chad, I'm like I said, I am not washing my hands for a month. I'd be totally done. I'd be totally checked out. If they trade back for Shenault, I would hate that. If they trade back for a linebacker or defensive lineman, I would hate that. If they move up to the top 5, even as good as Simmons is, it's still giving up so much capital, Chad, that you can't blow for a non-essential player. He'd be great in the system, but they need a center. They need a wide receiver. So if they move up to that far, I would hate that. They move back for a player like Shenault or a player like Patrick Queen, I would hate that. There's a lot of different scenarios that I would not like the Broncos do. I prefer them either trade up a few spots for a guy like Ruggs or stay put and let the board fall to them and take the best that's available. And for what it's worth, I'm not making any kind of a statement on Chase Young as a prospect. I mean, there's a fair argument to be made that he's the best defensive player in this class. It's just that who's going to sit, Vaughn or Chubb? Right.
Like, what are you going to do there? So anyway, that's not going to happen. So we'll see how it shakes out. Don jumps in, $5 super. Appreciate you, Don. Thank you very much, my friend. He says, what's up, bros? If the big 3 receivers and the top O linemen are gone by 15, I think we should trade back, get some more picks, and pick up Justin Jefferson. I wouldn't be opposed to that one bit. And Justin Jefferson, I mean, what did he have last year at LSU playing with Joe Burrow, I think something like 1,800 yards, double-digit touchdowns. I mean, he and Cortland Sutton could make a lot of hay.
Yeah, I would not hate the move at all. I prefer to see what's on the board at 15. But in this scenario, if all the linemen are gone, the big 3 wide receivers are gone, they want to move back into the late first round. I'm not taking Justin Jefferson, Chad, before pick 23 or so. They want to move back to the 25s. Yeah, take a receiver. I'd like Jefferson a lot more than the players I mentioned, like an inside linebacker or defensive lineman in that spot.
DeWalter jumping in. And somewhere there's a poor reporter reporting that Bill O'Brien is having the time of his life.
Too soon.
Maybe it is too soon.
Mr.
James jumping in from across the pond. He says, I saw a CBS mock that had the Broncos trade up to 11, passing on all of the big 3 receivers to take Georgia's Andrew Thomas, the offensive tackle. Ruggs went with the next pick. I genuinely got so annoyed at the draft, made me mad. Yeah, I can tell you there are a lot of people at Mile High Huddle that would share that sentiment if that were to shake out in real life. But, Zach, I don't think it will. I'm not saying Andrew Thomas couldn't end up being the pick at 15, but trading up to get him is not going to happen.
Right. Exactly. They can take him at 15. I'd be fine with that. But the only player they move up for a few spots, Chad, would be a wide receiver. It would be for Henry Ruggs, who there's so much smoke leading to that fire. It's not a smoke screen. It's not a guessing game. It's not a ploy. They love Henry Ruggs. And if they would move up, wouldn't be for a tackle. It'd be for Ruggs. I don't see Thomas in that scenario in the least.
Let's grab EA Shalom on YouTube. He says, would Elway take a center in the second? He doesn't seem to have a high value on them, considering that he let Connor McGovern and Matt Paradis walk over the last 2 years. Yeah, I mean, John Elway still has not paid a center. I mean, unless you consider an RFA tender of like $2.5 million for Matt Paradis a couple of years ago, paying a center. The value issue, I don't know how the Broncos look at it. However, it's the one big glaring hole on the offensive line. So taking a center in the second, Zach, I think that's something that would very much be on the table if Cushenberry, Ruiz, maybe Hennessy are there at 46.
It seems like the Broncos love developing centers into really above average solid players, and they just don't want to pay the guy. They don't want to invest in that position. But now they're kind of forced to. They have a young franchise quarterback, and they realize with the signing of Glasgow, with the way they're leading the pre-draft interviews they've been linked to, they have to protect their investment at quarterback. They have to protect the guy under center. Second round, absolutely, to me, it's my preference, Chad. It has to be a center if it's not the first round. They don't have a starting one right now. Patrick Morris, to me, is not a starting center. Good developmental guy to have, good backup prospect for Mike Munchak to get his hands on. Not the guy I want as the quarterback of my O-line. Give me Cushenberry, give me Ruiz, and go to war.
Freddie jumping in with a $10 super once again. Appreciate you, Freddie. He says, with the first 2 picks, take the 2 best wide receivers, and then you'll have the 3 amigos. And for those who don't know what he's talking about, I'm dating myself a little bit. Most hardcore Broncos fans who've been around for a while know exactly who the 3 amigos were from the late 80s. I was going to say early 90s. I'm not sure if they played together into the early 90, 91. But we're talking about Mark Jackson, Vance Johnson, I almost said Vance Joseph, and Ricky Nattiel. So you would have a new, potentially 3 amigos and Cortland Sutton and maybe a Henry Ruggs and maybe a Denzel Mims, just to spitball, which would be pretty dang cool, Zach.
It'd be cool, but not very practical. The Broncos have plenty of other weapons. They invested a first-round pick in Noah Fant. They gave Melvin Gordon a fat contract. They have Phillip Lindsay. They still have 2 great possession backups, Chad, and Tim Patrick and Deshaun Hamilton. They wouldn't have to dip both feet in the pool for wide receivers. One can suffice. And if that one is Henry Ruggs, it's good enough for me.
Brian jumping in with the $5 super. Appreciate you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Reminding everybody with his obligatory, just remember you heard it here first, Ruggs equals a bust. You guys know that. All 3 of the top receivers won't be good at the pro level, highly unlikely. Yeah, maybe not all 3, I mean, when's the last time the first 3 receivers taken in a class, each and every one turned out to be massive hits? I don't have the numbers in front of me, but there's a good bet at least one of those guys are probably going to end up being some caliber of a bust. But I really don't think Ruggs is that. We'll just have to differ on that, Brian. We love you, but I think Ruggs is the real deal.
I would wager a bet that Ruggs won't bust to the next level. And Brian, if you want to get in on that, I'd be more than happy to lay that down. I have full confidence. He's not John Ross. He's not this bust wide receiver prospect. He's going to have a very, very fulfilling career. I just hope it's with Denver.
Glenn on Facebook says, Happy Easter to the football priests and all of Broncos country.
Thank you,
It's
Glenn.
Good Friday morning here in Melbourne, Australia. Oh, that's cool. The more I think about how we are situated in the world at the moment, I truly think we should use next year's futures to tool up and get Drew Lock locked and loaded. College football will be crippled. College football will be crippled. Players won't develop as they cannot play or train. Oh, I see. With what's going on. What do you guys think? I don't think that's anything to worry about at this stage, personally, Glenn. I don't want to derail this conversation by talking about the situation that will go unnamed as it relates to this particular podcast. But I think by the time we get to the fall, Zach, a lot of these concerns are going to be ironed out. And worst case scenario is some of the, as far as football, might be delayed a little bit, but I still think the seasons are going to take place.
I have so much to say about this topic. I don't want to get us flagged at all. I'm not going to mention it by name, Chad, but it's April 9th right now. That's in September. That's in August. We have a lot of time left to go until then, and I have full confidence we're going to have a full college football season, a full NFL season, and I don't think that issue, which is a valid hypothetical to bring up, that it could lead to a domino effect going forward. I don't think we're going to have to worry about that. So the Broncos can't operate in that mindset. They have to assume right now, like Adele is, the season will go on.
Chris jumping in up in Canada, $5 donation. Appreciate that, Chris.
You,
and
Chris.
By the way, it's good I now know who you are on Twitter, so we'll be tagging you after this podcast. He says, any thoughts on the talk that Elway is looking to add an extra pick between our 15th and 46th? So, Chris, I don't know. I'm sure you were on yesterday's pod. We talked quite a bit about it yesterday, but it's just one of those situations where when it's Kliss saying it, the number one guy who, in terms of breaking the most news straight out of Dove Valley, you have to take it with more than a grain of salt. Does that mean that it's going to happen? No. It could simply be Elway trying to send up smoke signals, trying to obfuscate his intentions in the first and second round. But I tend to believe, Zach, that there's some veracity to it. When there's smoke, there's fire. When it's coming from a guy like Kliss, there's probably some truth to it. If you're John Elway and you want to maybe just send out lies or smoke signals, you maybe leak that information to someone not named Kliss.
And especially this year, the Broncos need a wide receiver and a starting offensive lineman. And this draft class is especially top-heavy with wide receiver and top offensive lineman. It's no coincidence the Broncos ignored those two positions in particular, Chad, in free agency. They tipped their hand as to what they're going to do in the draft. So I'd be all for I never usually recommend the Broncos blowing picks. I'd be all for acquiring a second first-round pick and double dipping for Drew Lock. Wide receiver, offensive line, or offensive line and wide receiver, that combination, I'm all for it. But if they move back up to the first round for a defensive lineman, I can't sign off on that, as we know right now.
Stu McPeak jumping in from Mount Rushmore, MHH. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Stu.
$10 super chat. Stu, it means the world to us, and
Awesome.
How consistent and outgoing and passionate you are. It is phenomenal, man. I know we're not the only ones who appreciate it too, your contributions to this community. DeWalter Drills calling me out on the carpet. CeeDee Lamb is too much like Cortland Sutton. We need speed and to be able to stretch the field. Lamb is nice. Don't get me wrong. He's going to make a team very happy. He's just not right for us. And Zach, this is one of those things where it kind of, beauty being in the eye of the beholder, and Dylan kind of echoing him here as well. The thing to keep in mind is this, guys. All right. January of 2020, even early February of 2020, nobody was acting like Henry Ruggs is the only option to complement Cortland Sutton. It wasn't until the combine and all eyes started turning to Ruggs in terms of his being tied to the Denver Broncos that it kind of grew in terms of urgency. There are more than one way to skin a cat. And what I'm telling you is I'm completely okay and open with anybody taking exception to who would be the best complement to Cortland Sutton. But in terms of ranking and ordering them, Zach, it all comes down to beauty being in the eye of the beholder. There's no accounting for taste, et cetera.
Right.
And to each their own. I'm not going to sit and pick bones with you, DeWalter or Dylan, on that topic, because you're your own men. You've got your own eyes. You got your own analysis, and we'll see how it shakes out.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I said it yesterday on yesterday's pod that one person wants Jefferson, another wants Ruggs, another wants Mims, another wants CeeDee Lamb. This draft class being so deep, it becomes a matter of opinion. And obviously the Broncos have the final call. Whoever Elway wants and his guys want, they're going to get. But CeeDee Lamb, to me, I have to disagree a little bit. He's way more explosive than Courtland Sutton. He's not as explosive as Henry Ruggs or maybe some of the other receivers in this draft class, but he would be an ideal complement, Chad. Any of the big three, I'd be happy with. I'm not being discriminatory. Any of the big three would be great in this offense and would be exactly what Denver needs for the long term.
Yes, Duke. Brandon Perna is a lock for Wednesday night's pod, so stay tuned for that. That's going to be a lot of fun. Here's an interesting question from Kyle. Which would you take, Andrew Thomas and Laviska Shenault or Jerry Jeudy and Austin Jackson? Zach, for me, it's the second duo there is what I would prefer. You agree? If so, why?
I'm just wary of Chenault's injury history. And even when he's healthy, he's not the most explosive guy in this draft class. Jeudy, in a level playing field, Jeudy is the much better wide receiver prospect, and you're still getting a starting caliber offensive tackle behind Bowles and Juwan James. It's a no-brainer. I'm taking Jeudy and Thomas all day.
Amen. Nunzi jumping in from the top rope, $15 super. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Robbie.
Nunzi, that means a lot to us, buddy. He says, what's up, guys? Thoughts on Ashton Davis for safety depth? Ashton Davis, I just wrote about this today, so it's fresh on my mind. He was one of the picks that was made by the MMQB for the Denver Broncos. In fact, I think he was the first third-round pick for the Denver Broncos in that mock. And I'll be honest with you, even though I think he's, if I'm not mistaken, I think he's Eric Trickle's number 5 safety in this class, our senior draft analyst at milehighhuddle.com. For me, there are several other safeties I like more than Ashton Davis. He wouldn't be bad. He'd be an upgrade over what the Broncos have right now. But Zach, I'd be more interested if you're going to get beyond the McKinneys and the Delpits in the first and second round consideration. I'd be a lot more focused on a Jeremy Chin. I know it's small school and you got to worry about that. Even Kyle Duggar to me from Lenore Ryan would be more exciting than Ashton Davis. And again, Davis would be an upgrade. I don't hate him as a player. He's just not my favorite option at safety.
Plus, I don't know where this urgency is coming from, Chad, with the Broncos needing to draft a safety. Yeah, they have to replace Will Parks, but they have Simmons and Kareem Jackson both under contract, so they're good for starters, and you just need depth. They can find that guy in the middle rounds. I'm not touching a safety until probably the third round at minimum. Safety and cornerback in those middle rounds are the time to address them. To answer the question, though, I'd rather go for Chin. I just like his athletic upside and also his pedigree with Steve Atwater. I'm just more inclined to take a gamble on him than someone like Ashton Davis.
Kevin G jumps in, $5 super. Appreciate you, Kevin. He says, who do you think the wide receiver sleepers are? The ones nobody's talking about. Maybe we can grab in the later rounds after for protect lock in the protect lock first. Well, let's take a look here. Bear with me one second, guys. I've already referenced his rankings a couple of times, so why don't we just pull up Trickle's rankings and big board for 2020. Bear with me one second here. I've got to click on the right year. There we go. And then I'm going to share this screen with you guys so you can see what I'm seeing here. Bear with me, Zach. You'll want to see this too. Board and rankings. Eric has this pinned on his Twitter if you guys ever want to go check this out yourselves. But let's look at wide receiver. I think as far as like the top guys, from a sleeper perspective, you could argue maybe Jalen Reagor. People are sleeping on him a little bit because his stock has been so down coming out of the combine. I think Donovan Peoples-Jones, the wideout from Michigan, could end up being one of the better receivers in this class when it's all said and done. Not getting a lot of, the same love and attention some of these other guys. You could say the same maybe for T. Higgins. Chase Claypool is probably in Devin Duvernay, KJ Hamler. That trio, to me, Zach, maybe throw in Michael Pittman Jr. quite a bit later. But that trio in particular, to me, sticks out as the sleepers in this class.
It's such a great class that even these sleepers, Chad, they would be undrafted free agents in another class. But John Hightower, Van Jefferson, and Quez Watkins are 3 names in the middle rounds I would not mind the Broncos taking a gamble on. They have to double up, and Devin Duvernay as well. He's another option. There's just so many players for the Broncos to draft this year. It's such a good problem to have for Denver. They need 2 receivers ideally, and I would double up in the first round and probably the third or fourth round. The guys I mentioned, Van Jefferson specifically, I can't even talk. He'd be great in the slot, a great understudy for whoever they draft at 15.
Mark jumps in again, $10 super. Appreciate you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
The world to us, my friend. He says, who do we pick if the big three receivers are gone? And so are Jedrick Wills, Tristan Wirfs, and Mekhi Becton. All right, so your top three tackles are gone. Top three receivers are gone, Zach. You can't trade back. Who you taking?
Is Andrew Thomas there? Because if he's there, I'm probably
Andrew
going
Thomas
down.
is there.
Yep. I'm probably taking a tackle at that spot.
See, this is one area that Zach and I differ a little bit in terms of the urgency of the cornerback position. Players like Jeff Gladney would be on the table for me here. Even C.J. Henderson, who I know is not a trendy selection for the Broncos, the corner from Florida. But Andrew Thomas would definitely be an option at 15. We talked earlier about not being realistic to trade up to take Andrew Thomas, but I'd be more inclined to take a guy like Jeff Gladney and then circle back and grab Andrew Thomas's tackle partner, Isaiah Wilson, in the second or third round, maybe the third round if you can get him there. But it's a really interesting question. And Zach, we're only 2 weeks away from this thing being reality. No more guessing.
Thank God. We need this to come now.
That we do. Junior jumps in, $2 super. Appreciate that, my friend. That means the world to us. Buana wants to know, without a workout, do you think Josh Jones could fall significantly? Yes, I really do, Buana. I mean, he's got so much athletic upside, but he's still very raw. Played at relatively, in terms of level of competition at Houston and Conference USA. Teams are going to have concerns about that. Not being able to scratch and sniff, get up close, these scouts and coaches with him, I can only imagine it's going to hurt him. I still think he ends up going in, the top 60, but probably not till round 2. I could be wrong, but we'll see how it shakes out.
And the Broncos do have interest. They've interviewed him so far, so they're getting well acquainted with all the top tackle prospects in this class. Second round pick is a little risky. He has high bust factor, in my opinion, but third round, that's a value pick. I would not mind it if they don't address that spot before then. Samuel
wants to know on YouTube, if Isaiah Simmons is there at 10, would you trade up for him or Ruggs if both are available? If all things are being equal, I'm going for Simmons in that case. That's just me. I'm not the biggest cheerleader for wide receiver at pick 15. So for me, if I'm within striking distance of either of those two players and I'm weighing it on the scales, I'm going with Simmons and I'm grabbing a wide receiver in the second round. What do you think, Zach?
I'm definitely picking up the phone or firing up the Zoom conference, however they want to handle it this year in the draft, but I am definitely seeing what it would take to move up to 10. If it wouldn't be all the third round picks, I'm probably moving up for Simmons. You put him in this defense, they're better than Super Bowl 50. They're just on another level. And this receiver class is so deep. You can get, like Chad said, a starting caliber guy in the second round. After Simmons, this inside linebacker class, after Murray and Queen, kind of falls off. So I'm taking Simmons in that scenario.
Jorge jumps in on YouTube. He says, hi, guys, here from Mexico. Hashtag state of being, baby. How would you feel if Denver goes out of the first 3 rounds with one of the big 3 wide receivers in the first, Cushenberry or Ruiz in the second, and Patrick, I think you're thinking Chin, right? Not Patrick Chung, who's obviously a safety for the New England Patriots. I'm guessing you mean Chin. And Akeem Davis-Gaither in round 3. I could be okay with that, Zach. That very scenario. I could live with that.
To me, Cushenberry in the second round, who's probably a first-round prospect, and a big 3 receiver at 15, either Ruggs or Lamb or Judy. That's my best-case scenario for Denver. So I am all over that mock scenario.
All right, let's grab Brian here with a $2 super. Thank you, my friend.
Brian.
Love watching your show. Great content. You're going to make us cry over here, Doc. Zach, grab this one here from Jinja Ninja 88 while the stream passed up some supers. I'm going to go grab them real quick.
Jinja Ninja 88, that's a great name. They ask Chubb or comeback player of the year. I wouldn't discount it. I see him having another double-digit sack season. I just think this is going to be the year of Vaughn's reclamation after last year being a wash and him being injured, putting on weight. Chubb is going to kind of increasingly come back to the player he once was, not having off-season program, not having workouts. His inability to get in the Broncos facility right now to rehab is hurting him, but once training camp rolls around, he shakes off the rust from his inactivity. He'll be back to being the Bradley Chubb that we knew. I just think in a 2020 scenario, Von Miller is going to have the bigger impact. He's going to go back to being Von that we all know and love.
I do think it's on the table. I mean, if he can kind of get back to that momentum he had coming out of his phenomenal 12-sack rookie year, all bets are off. He could very well be that caliber of a guy, but you just got to keep in mind it's going to take some time for Chubb to get acclimated, back up to speed. Let's just say get his football legs underneath him.
Right.
DeWalter Drills jumped in and the stream passed by his card. So we love you, bro. He says,
Thank you, DeWalter.
Appreciate that $5 super. He says, Shenault is a drastic drop in talent from the top 3 receivers, and it's not even close. People need to watch film on all 3 of the top receivers, then Shenault. It's not even close. Right. And he's right in terms of refinement. I mean, you could argue that athletically he's as gifted as some of those guys, but from a refined, polished, finished product perspective, nowhere close.
And to me, I don't care what he can do if he can't stay on the field. It doesn't matter. He can be the fastest guy in the world. He can be 8 feet tall with the best hands, but if he's never available, it doesn't matter anyway. So I'm taking more of a sure thing. And I agree with that. The talent gap that goes from tier 1 to tier 2 is pretty massive. That's why I prefer, if I can, to get one of those tier 1 guys at 15, then work my way back to other needs in the later rounds.
Brian jumps back in with a super. Appreciate you, my friend. Super chat superstar indeed.
Thank you, Brian.
$5 super. He says, the WTF draft move will come from Bill O'Brien from the Texans. That could very well end up being true, Zach.
Yeah, I can't wait to see his Zoom virtual experience. Yeah, probably going to trade himself for a bag of footballs or something.
All right, let me see. I'm not sure if this – actually, I am sure. Hold on one sec. We got to grab Glenn. Let me put him in real quick. One of our Super Chat superstars who the stream jumped. Bear with me one sec, Glenn. We're going to grab you right now. Save. Joe. $5 super. Appreciate you, Glenn.
Thank you, Glenn.
Did you see that Bashaud Breeland signed for only $4.5 million with KC? That would have been a great value signing. Hashtag Sam Hill, Mount Rushmore, state of being. You are getting up there, Glenn, in terms of the Mount Rushmore. You really are, man. You're so consistent, and you're such a great part of our community, and we appreciate you.
Yes.
I did not see that. That's news to me. I didn't see that move from Bashaud Breeland, but that is ridiculous value, Zach.
But, is it money worth spending, though? I mean, can you just draft 2 speedy receivers and then not have to pay that much in total for 2 guys being on the rookie contracts? And Breeland, he's an okay player. He's better in that Kansas City system than he would be anywhere else. I'm taking that $4.5 million. I am keeping that. I am pocketing that. Bad enough the Broncos wasted 16 on Melvin Gordon. I'm not going out to the open market and spending $4.5 on a receiver that I can just draft for a fraction of the cost and twice the upside.
Andrew jumps in with a $5 super. Appreciate you, Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew.
And again, guys, when we have to, we can't show your Twitter card, or I should say your Super Chat card. We hate it, but this is better than nothing. He says, hey, Broncos Priest, what's your plans for the 3-day draft? Going live during it, I hope. Rather listen to you guys than ESPN, NFL Network.
Appreciate that.
Hey, that's awesome, dude. There's going to be something now, unless I missed something today, Zach, and it's entirely possible because I've kind of been a little bit more unplugged today from the internet than I normally am. However, unless I missed something, we don't yet know for sure how the draft is going to unfold after the first round. I think that's still up in the air unless you've heard any different.
No.
So that being the case, if it does end up being the way it traditionally is, and it goes first round's Thursday night, second round is Friday night, third round is Saturday midday, if that's how it ends up shaking out, I guarantee you'll get a live podcast during the first round. You'll get a live podcast Friday night for a majority of that day 2. And then Saturday, absolutely. I don't know if it'll be a live pod throughout, but there will be a live pod that day to at least recap and react to what happened. So, and who knows, we don't quite know for sure yet how the draft is going to unfold from a programming perspective. But as soon as we do get some details on that from the NFL, we'll pass that on to you guys and let you know what we plan on doing.
Once the NFL holds that mock draft dry run to work out all the kinks from their virtual system, then we should get a definitive outline for what the draft is going to be in terms of minutes, in terms of rounds, how they're going to split it up. It might just be the same as it always is. It's just all virtual. But like Chad said, we're going to be on here as much as we can. We're going to try to talk as much draft as we can, and we'll put pods out for all 3 days. So,
Rod, love Ruggs, but there's something about Lamb that makes me want him more. Your thoughts? You guys know how I feel about this. I don't want to flog a dead horse too much. Lamb's my number 1 guy. I think I think as a receiver from a complete skill set. Now, raw athleticism, Ruggs has a couple of check marks on him, but from just being an overall polished impact player out of the gates, I like Lamb, but some people like Ruggs, and that's all good. That's my opinion.
All subjective, and I'll say it again. It might be just, you guys are tired of hearing it, but I'm okay with any of the big three. They would all seamlessly fit in this offense and would instantly contribute for Drew Lock, which is by far and away the number one goal.
Dylan brings up a great point here. Some credit goes to Zach Azzani, the wide receivers coach in Denver, for the lightning quick development of Cortland Sutton. I mean, he was really good as a rookie, stepping in as the number 3 guy. You had Demaryius Thomas still. You had Emmanuel Sanders. He puts up 600-something yards, a handful of touchdowns. But that quantum leap in year 2, I mean, he deserves all the credit in the world. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to take anything from Sutton, but Zach Azzani deserves some of that credit as well, which makes me excited no matter which wide receiver they end up with in the first round or the second round or whoever in this class, Zach. I'm confident that that player is going to be in very good hands.
Yeah, because Sutton was raw coming out as well. That's why he slipped to where he did. And the Broncos landed a great wide receivers coach in Azzani, so it kind of mitigates the bust factor. If you're worried about Henry Ruggs, there is a higher bust factor on 31 other teams than it would be for the Broncos. I just want to make a correction real quick. Breeland, the cornerback, I was thinking of Brashad Perriman, who went to the Jets, not Brashad Breeland, the cornerback. My point still stands, though. I would not have wasted $4.5 million. I can just bring in a guy through the draft. So it's the same answer, but I wanted to clarify that real quick.
All right. Yeah, that does change the conversation a little bit. Justin, $20 super. Wow. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Justin.
J-Bone, my friend. He says, great job as always. Thanks as always, guys. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
Can't wait for this draft to see what Elway has up his sleeve. I think he's getting the hang of this drafting thing. Stay safe, guys. # state of being from Cali. By the way, guys, I mean, this is Elway's 10th draft, right? Since he arrived as the top football executive in Denver. And I just published an article at milehighhuddle.com. Go check it out. Taking a look back at Elway's, I would say 9 first-round picks, but he's made 8 first-round picks. I did include Derek Wolfe in this article and video because he was the first pick for the Broncos, 36 overall, first pick in 2012. But there's enough of a sample size there to really kind of get a bead, Zach, on John Elway's overall competency as a draft artist, right? And I think he showed some really strong ability and insight early on. And then I think he got a little bit lazy because Peyton Manning allows you to be not so much lazy, but dropped his guard a little bit, made a few not so great picks from, let's say 2013 through 2016 at the end with Paxton Lynch. But these last 2 drafts in particular, he has shown, Zach, that he's kind of turned the ship around. The 2018 class, the 2019 class, you can stack one more. So you got back to back to back. That could be the finishing touches on this rebuild and turn the ship around.
That's well said, Chad. Yeah, in the beginning, Elway was kind of finding his way. He was always that aggressive general manager, but he was banking a lot more on upside and project picks. The Paxton Lynches and DeMarcus Walkers of the world. The last 2 draft classes, he's emphasized team captains, 4-year starters, guys who have legit resumes, legit game tape to put out. The Josie Jewell pick epitomized that a couple years ago, Chad. That's when he decided to shift the paradigm, shift the thinking of what he wants to do. And it's no coincidence he's hit it out of the park. He learned to build from within. That's how you have sustainable success in the NFL, not free agency, not trades. It's through the draft. And he's knocked 2 grand slams in a row now. I fully agree with you, Chad. One more, the Broncos will be contenders, not just in 2020, for the long term.
DH3 jumping in with a $5 super, a super chat superstar. Appreciate you, my friend. Do you guys feel the Henry Ruggs hype is a product of Tyreek Hill's success? Yes, absolutely. Whether the hype is real or not, a big reason why it's being so heavily focused on is absolutely because of Tyreek Hill. In my opinion, I feel NFL teams are trying to replicate Hill. And yes, and DH3, it's not just replicate Hill. I mean, the NFL is a copycat league, and the Kansas City Chiefs were one boneheaded play away from being in back-to-back Super Bowls. They're world champions, as much as it makes us all green in the gills to even mention. But nevertheless, the NFL is trying to carbon copy that and then, duplicate, repeat, rinse. That's what the Broncos are trying to do in their own way with Pat Shurmur, with Drew Lock, and the collection of talent they have. I mean, look, you got Travis Kelce. The Broncos have Noah Fant, first-round pick. You've got Cortland Sutton. The Chiefs have, I guess you could say Tyreek Hill, or Sammy Watkins. I don't know where did Watkins go. I'm not even sure. I know he's a free agent. But, yes, teams are trying to copy. And Tyreek Hill, big part of that, he's arguably, I think you can make an argument. He is the most unstoppable wide receiver in the NFL because of that speed. NFL teams, they can put 2 and 3 guys on him, Zach, and sometimes he still sneaks through, gets behind him, touchdown.
I'm not going to sit here and deny that Tyreek Hill isn't influencing some of these draft comparisons. Everyone wants the next Tyreek Hill. He's just that good of a player. But let's not act like Henry Ruggs does not have his own laurels to stand on either. When 25% of your touches go for touchdowns, when you run the 40 time he ran, when you come from the system he came from, that's all deserving of the hype he's getting. He's not the next Tyreek Hill. He's the next Henry Ruggs. He's his own player, and he would be dynamic and unstoppable, I think, with a quarterback like Drew Lock and playing aside a receiver like Sutton.
Ron Dove, a Super Chat superstar indeed.
Thank you, Ron.
Jumps in, $5 super. Appreciate you, bro. Who do you think is the extra pick from the blockbuster trade? Queen or – so going back to what we were talking about on yesterday's show, Mike Kliss, the Broncos trading back up and making a selection in between 46 and 15. Who would that pick be? He says Queen or Murray for me. I know Elway will have the final say, but Fangio will be an influence. And Ron, it wouldn't surprise me if it were a linebacker, especially if it ends up being early second. It wouldn't surprise me to see Fangio get his Roquan Smith or to get his Navarro Bowman.
To me, the third biggest need on this team is inside linebacker because they really don't have a long-term starter there either. I would love Kenneth Murray in that spot, Chad, but if Cushenberry's on the board, I probably think long and hard about taking him before, risking him to the second round where he might be snatched up. So Cushenberry, offensive line, wide receivers, that's my first preference, but number 3 right beneath him is inside linebacker, and I'd be happy with Queen or Murray in a potential trade up into the early second round or late first round.
All right, guys, we're starting to get low on time, so we're going to rapid fire through these remaining supers. We don't want to miss anybody. Brian jumps back in, $2 super. Appreciate you, Bri. DeWalter, 2 Suttons. I'll buy that. LOL. I'm not sure what he's saying. I might have missed it. But appreciate that, my friend. And then Dylan, Super Chat Superstar, $2 super. Appreciate you, Dill. He says, I'm happy with either of the 3 wide receivers, but prefer Ruggs. And that's totally cool, man. To each their own. And like I said, I'm with you on that. Like if the Broncos did end up, Zach, with any one of those 3, you say thank you and you look at what they're going to bring to the offense.
Yeah, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. If you can get any of those big 3 receivers, I mean, you got to take them. I'm not, discriminating.
All right. Bear with us one second here. I want to make sure nobody gets missed. Freddie again. Appreciate you, Freddie. He says, awesome. Did we miss out on Hopkins? Could have had him plus a pick for our 15th. Great work, guys. I am new to Super Chat. Didn't mean to double ask the first question.
It's all good.
It's all good, my friend. It's all good. The question, though, did we miss out on Hopkins? No. It's in those type of situations, not in every case is all 31 other GMs made aware that a guy is even on the block. Sometimes they put it out there and let everyone know, hey, dude's on the block. First come, first serve, make me an offer. Other cases, there are back channels and relationships that get leveraged and worked. We don't know exactly how that trade unfolded between Houston and Arizona, but if Elway were at least apprised of that as an opportunity, did we miss out on Hopkins? Could have had him plus a pick for our 15. I don't really see it that way, Zach.
I don't think the Broncos would take on his contract. That'd be the big thing when they can, again, draft a guy at a fraction of the cost. DeAndre Hopkins and Courtland Sutton with Drew Lock as the quarterback is obviously great to think about, but in a practical sense, in a business sense, I don't think the Broncos wanted that much money on the books when they're looking to probably draft a guy at 15 for, a fourth of the price.
Okay, this podcast, we're going to be going over just a little bit because we have some superstars we are not going to miss out on tonight. David jumps in, for example, $10 super. Appreciate you, David. If we do get Ruggs as the wide receiver 2, then who would be our wide receiver 3? Well, you can't sleep on the possibility, David, of the Broncos doubling up. That's something that I think it was Benjamin Albright said to kind of look for in this class. If it happens that way, we'll see. But let's say it is Ruggs at pick 15. Even if the Broncos don't make another wide receiver selection, Zach, you upgraded that depth chart significantly. You got Sutton and Ruggs as your 1 and 2. You got Deshaun Hamilton, who, even though he doesn't have an explosive bone in his body, he's a very competent and savvy route runner, showed a strong connection with Drew Lock late in the season. So and combine that with Noah Fant, I would like the way that offense would be looking, especially now you got 2 Pro Bowl running backs.
Right.
Like, sky's the limit.
Right. I do think the third receiver will come through the draft. I think the Broncos will take 2 wide receivers, but answering the question without another receiver, a rookie receiver, to me, it has to be Tim Patrick. He's the most advanced player among their current receivers. The Broncos trust him. Drew Lock trusts him. He's a great route runner and another red zone weapon. You cannot have too many for a quarterback like Drew Lock, and combined with Melvin Gordon, Phillip Lindsay, Noah Fant. I mean, it's just a surplus of weapons, and it's a good problem to have.
TG, speaking of Super Chat, superstars from the Mount Rushmore of this podcast and Mile High Huddle, $10 super. Thank you, TG. The only 2 wideouts worth trading up for, Jerry Jeudy, and CeeDee Lamb. Ruggs is round 2 in my book. That's interesting. I'd be curious to know why you view him as a round 2 caliber prospect, TG. But this is another example, Zach, of beauty being in the eye of the beholder, or, football players in the eye of the beholder.
I can't remember a draft class, Chad, where it was more opinionated between Broncos fans of who they want. Usually every year we can all agree on one position or one player that we want, but this year there's so many differing opinions and everyone wants a different wide receiver. It'll be interesting to see who the Broncos end up agreeing with and who they actually take on draft day.
Andy here says, I asked last night but didn't get any interest, so comparing apples to oranges, haha, I get it. The offense roster of Kansas City versus the roster offense of Denver. Compare them. They're pretty similar. Maybe the quarterback and the fast wideout is what we lack. So I say we go out and do what we need to get the best receiver. I'm thinking fast would be Ruggs, but Lamb is also a true value. Thanks, guys. Love the show. Number one fan in Kansas. Appreciate that, Andy. I don't think quarterback, Locke still has a lot to prove, but I don't think quarterback is something the Broncos are missing in that equation, but they are missing the speed.
If you want to compare them, Kansas City has a better quarterback. You can say, I don't know about receiving core, maybe for now until the Broncos draft their guy. They have a slight edge in receiving core. Broncos have a better ground game. I think the offensive line is a wash, and if the Broncos O-line plays to potential, they will be better. So they're just a quarterback away, but Locke, you can't expect him to be Mahomes in his first year. Not even him starting yet, but can he be? Can he be in that tier? Absolutely. And if he is, the Broncos have a lot of fun matchups with Kansas City for years to come.
I'm just taking a quick look back. I'm seeing on the analytics if we indeed did miss something here. On our side of things, my friend, it doesn't show that we missed yet. But Junior, just a $20 super is phenomenal, amazing. Man. That means a lot to us. I'm just making sure here. Let me double check. This is actually my triple check here. 1 second.
I feel like we would have seen that.
Yeah. Actually, what it is it was $2 super, and you typed 100 in the comment. So either way, man, if that's what you intended to do, this $20 super, it's all good, my friend. You're supporting the show. We appreciate you, my friend. That means the world to us. Anthony jumping in, $5 super. Appreciate you, bro. Anthony, by the way, if you're on Twitter, let me know who you are so I can start tagging you after each and every podcast. He says we had the red zone defense. We had 2 red zone defense last season. We had a top red zone defense last season. How do you think rebrand this year with Wolf and Harris gone? How will our red zone offense do as well? So that's a good point. The one thing Fangio was able to put together really well last year, Zach, is it was one of, if not the best red zone defense in the NFL. You're losing Wolf, you're losing Harris, but in Wolf's place, you're getting Jarrell Casey, and in Harris's place, you're getting AJ Bouye. So this coaching staff inherited Wolf and Harris. They got the players they feel like fit them better, I think, at this stage in terms of Casey and Bouye. So I think there's a good chance, Zach, you're going to see this be a really good red zone defense again in 2020. Offense, we shall see. There's still so much we don't know yet about how this thing is going to look with Pat Shurmur.
Both players, Casey and Bouye, for my money, are upgrades on Wolf and Harris. So the Broncos defense, especially when they have Bradley Chubb coming back, they have Bryce Callahan, they have another year in Vic Fangio's system, they can add to the defense in the draft. They're going to be better than they were last year in the red zone and everywhere else on defense. Offense depends on who they draft, but they have enough weapons. Even if they take a speedy guy in Henry Ruggs, just having Cortland Sutton, having Noah Fant, having Gordon, having Phillip Lindsay, it's going to be an embarrassment of riches. So the Broncos red zone ranking, I would say somewhere in the top 12. They're going to put way more points up on the board, though. But like Chad said, I want to see the whole offense and roster come together before we can render a determination.
Glenn jumping in, $5 super chat, superstar. Appreciate you, brother. He says, what are the odds the Raiders grab Jordan Love before us instead of a wide receiver? That would be huge for Denver. Hashtag screw Oakland, LA, Oakland, Las Vegas. That would be awesome in terms of the board falling more favorably for Denver and pushing wide receivers, that they might like down and taking a wide receiver threat team off the board. I've heard that as well. I've also heard a low key, and this isn't a bold prediction, that there's kind of a grassroots effort from the LA Chargers fans for the Chargers to take Jordan Love. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think the Raiders definitely go wide receiver with their top pick. They just need a guy for Derek Carr, and in Gruden's offense, they don't have that wide receiver one right now. So it'd be great if Love was the guy. I just don't see it playing out that way.
Damien jumps in, $5 super. Appreciate you,
Thank
buddy.
You, Damien.
I remember the Three Amigos, and to go one step further, and live next door and lived next door to Rick Upchurch. Oh, that's cool, man.
That's awesome.
That's very cool. Rick Upchurch was an OG, and I think probably is the first guy to make famous the 80 jersey number. But that's awesome. Mark jumping in. Good to see you, my friend. $2 super. What's up? In case you missed it, I'm sure you'll be happy to hear, Mark, that we're having Brandon Perna on the show next week on Wednesday. So look forward to that. All right, let's see. Let me make sure I'm not missing anybody. Bear with me 1 second. Damien again while I search. $15 super. Wow, thanks,
Thank you, Damien. It's awesome.
I agree that the Broncos are in need of an inside linebacker. Who are some sleepers looking for the next Al Wilson? Speaking of Wilsons, Logan Wilson, I think, how do you define a sleeper? Is a sleeper a guy who might have starter talent and ability, but is not being viewed in the premium rounds or the first round or whatever? If that's the case, he is one. Wilson up at Wyoming. There are some other options. I mean, we can look at, just so I have the names fresh in front of my face here, I think Akeem Davis-Gaither, ADG, is a sleeper. Troy Dye from Oregon, sleeper. Zach Bond, maybe not. A real sleeper, Zach, would probably be Davion Taylor from CU because he's so raw, but I think he's a guy that's going to need a couple of years to marinate.
Yeah, ADG is definitely my sleeper pick in the third round or so. I mean, this is a guy who fits Fangio's system like a glove. At the next level, he'd be an instant day one starter. I think he would actually, maybe not day one, but he would take Todd Davis's starting spot. And next to Alexander Johnson, just a formidable, young, athletic duo. So ADG as a sleeper inside linebacker, that's my pick.
TG jumping back in, $5 super. Thanks, bro.
Thank you, TG.
Receivers are just not valued in the first round like in 2011. I love Ruggs, but he is the fourth best on my big board. Interesting. So who do you have in? So we know you got Judy and Lamb. Who's the guy that you're placing ahead of Ruggs there? Is it Jefferson? I'd be curious to know. Boise Man jumping in with a $1 super chat. That means everything to us. Every little bit means the world to us, my brother. Boise Man again. Heck yeah. Been waiting for a Perna mashup. Yep. It's going to be fun. We'll get his thoughts on the draft and, what he wants to see the Broncos do this year. It'll be fun.
Have my quote next to me. Wow. That's awesome.
Christy jumping in from the top rope.
Thank you.
Not just from the top rope, from the Mount Rushmore, making her presence known. That is unbelievable. Thank you, Christy. Yeah. Much love. And she's rocking the Huddle Up hoodie. I think it's the hoodie, maybe not a t-shirt. Appreciate you so much. That means the world to us. You're important to this community, and you know it. And even though you jumped in late, I think I didn't see in this chat stream earlier. Better late than never. It's good to see you.
Dropping Von Miller money too, Chad. 50.
That's right, Von Miller. The symbolism cannot be lost on us. David, again, appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you, David.
I really think that Bouye and Callahan are good corner number 2 and 3 guys. Would really like to see Elway move up to get a CUDA to be a cornerback 1. I think you can hope maybe Bouye could be a 1. What I saw from him last year, I think those days are behind him. I remain hopeful, though, that Fangio's scheme can bring that out of him as a fit. I don't disagree with his premise here. That's why my particular thing, and probably why Zach and I differ a little bit. Cornerback to me is more of a need, a higher priority need in round 1 and 2. If the opportunity arises, the right guy is there. I agree. But getting up for Okudah, Zach, I mean,
No,
you're paying out the nose to get into the top 5, which is what it's going to take probably to get Okudah.
Plus, you're paying Bouye. You gave Bryce Callahan $20 million, and when Devontae Bosby, Chad, is your number 3 cornerback, you're in pretty good shape. When Isaac Yiadom is number 4, you're in pretty good shape. I just don't think it's a dire need because they have their top 3 guys on the depth chart. If they didn't get Bouye, if they didn't re-sign Bosby, one of those 2 moves, I would say I'm all for it. Go and get Okudah. Go try to move up for him. Get C.J. Henderson at 15. But you have 3 solid guys on the depth chart you can afford to meet. So wait till a couple rounds after the first.
Boise man is excited. Appreciate that, Super, for the Perna mashup. Yeah, that's going to be fun. Let's see here, Junior. One more from Junior. Good job, bros. Wow. In my hundo question, the question was, or statement is, we need Ruggs. And Junior, for what it's worth, I will double check the analytics after this podcast. I'm not seeing it live. If I missed it, I will let you know. And we'll, either way, you should reach out to us at milehighhuddle@gmail.com. Send you a little thank you for being so supportive. Yeah. But he said he wants Ruggs. Hey, man, to each their own. I want Ruggs too, as well as a few other players, I would like to see the Broncos end up with in this class.
Henry Ruggs, no matter what.
Henry Ruggs, no matter what. All right, let me see. Make sure I'm not missing anybody. I think I got everybody. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining us tonight. All the questions, all of the interaction. Brian wants to know how long you guys are going to be live during the draft. Remains to be seen, but at least first round on Thursday night, we're going to fire up basically as the draft is starting. Be watching it live, reacting to it live, right alongside you guys. And, Zach and I might pop on and off. There's going to be other podcast hosts on this thing with us. Zach and I might pop on and off to throw content up at the website, but then we'll be back on. So it'll probably be a long frickin' podcast. And you guys, of course, we hope and expect you to be there. It's going to be fun. Chase, I assume they meant they're going live with Perna sometime. Yeah, Wednesday night. He's going to be on the show Wednesday night, live podcast. So look to that.
Do we miss you, George? I thought we got you. I don't know if we didn't see your super
hold on.
chat.
Let me double check, George.
Never want to miss out.
He's right. I see it right there. Hold on one sec, George. Thanks for pointing it out, my brother. We don't want to miss George. Speaking of a superstar, where to go? Hold on. I had it, and then it just reloaded. Bear with me 1 second. There it is. Okay, George. Sorry, brother. Let me grab this, put it on the screen. And right down here. Whoops. Right here. Bear with us 1 sec, people. Can't leave George hanging out to dry. It's cutting off part of your question, so I'm going to have to read the second half. I'm going to read it anyway. But George, $10 super. Appreciate you, my friend. Speaking of super chat superstars, does Pat Shurmur coach from the sideline, or is he going to be in the booth like Skangs was? I prefer the coaches to be down on the field with the players. And then he says, what your take on this? Yeah, he's a sideline guy. Yeah. I don't know going back his entire career, but he learned under, at the feet of Andy Reid. Andy Reid's a sideline guy. Pat Shurmur's a sideline guy as well, Zach.
I hate when they have coaches or coordinators in the booth chat. I mean, you have guys, you have spotters up there. You have to be down on the sidelines, seeing the action from your own vantage point, from your own eyes up close. You have to be around the players to tell them things, not just relayed via telephone. I much prefer him being down on the sideline, and traditionally, that's where he usually is.
Now, since I missed George, now I'm really starting to worry that I missed that other one. But this question coming from Andy. Thanks for answering my questions. How do I contribute? Listen, guys, we're never going to ask you to contribute. If you want to do it, you got to be on YouTube. That's the only option through Super Chat. And it's pretty simple. You log it. Make sure you subscribe to Mile High Huddle on YouTube. And then in the comment stream when we're live, just like you're watching it live on Facebook, on that side on YouTube, there's an option for you to Super Chat if you want. But, guys, that's got to do it for today's episode of the Huddle Up Podcast. We went about 13, 14 minutes long, but that's okay because Zach and I love each and every minute we're on here with you guys. In a perfect world, we'd hang out all day just talking football with you guys. but that might end up in a divorce for Chad Jensen right now. So we got to pump the brakes. But make sure, guys, you are following the show on Twitter at HuddleUpPod. And while you're at it, make sure you follow Mile High Huddle to stay plugged into Broncos breaking news as it happens. And my partner here, as you can see, Zack Kelberman at Kelberman NFL, myself at Chad and Jensen. Stay tuned, guys, because Zack and I are off Friday. We're off Saturday, but we'll be back in the saddle Sunday night with a fresh podcast. Stay tuned for that. That next Sunday is going to be our War Room Roundtable doing a mock draft. So, it's still a little ways out, but we're looking forward to another great week of podcasting starting on Sunday. Buona Beast. Great podcast. That's right, guys. One last thing you can do on the way out, like the video no matter where you're watching, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, give us a like. And it's a great organic way to support the show. We love you too. I am Supreme.
Thank you.
22. Appreciate that on your way out the door. Anyway, guys, Zack, have a great weekend, bro.
You too, Chad, and thank you so much, everyone, for your contributions, for your interaction tonight, for your questions. It's why Chad and I always love these mailbag pods. It's our favorite night of the week on Thursday night to be able to talk with you guys. So big Mile High salute to you, and we'll see you Sunday.
Undoubtedly. Mile High salute, especially to the Super Chat superstars, and a massive thank you to each and every one of you. Have a great weekend, Broncos country. Stay safe. Do what you can to keep yourself sane. Watch some Super Bowl 50 on YouTube. Watch The Drive. I don't know if Super Bowl 48's on there. Probably don't want to rewatch that one, but there are ways to stay plugged in. Make sure you're checking milehighhuddle.com all day long for news and analysis. Eric's publishing multiple Finding Broncos each and every day. So check it out, milehighhuddle.com. For Zack, I'm Chad. We'll talk to you guys again Sunday night, 6:15.